It was a quiet evening in Seattle. The kind of evening where the rain lightly tapped against the window, the soft hum of the city barely audible in the background. I sat in my home office, surrounded by sketches of new design projects, my mind wandering between creative ideas and the satisfaction of a successful day. I leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of the day's work lift off my shoulders. But then, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Olivia. My wife. She had just gotten back from a business meeting, or at least, that's what I assumed. It was a quick message. Simple. Good night, darling. I hope we can be together again tomorrow. I stared at the message for a moment, something not quite right about it. She had just left a few hours ago, after all. Why would she send a message like that now? I tried to shake off the feeling, but the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I became. The words felt distant, almost rehearsed. The kind of message you send when you're trying to cover something up. But why? It wasn't like Olivia to be distant. Or was it? Lately, there had been a noticeable shift between us. A subtle but undeniable gap that had begun to grow. She'd been traveling a lot for work, spending more time with Lucas, a business partner of hers. A younger, more ambitious guy. I didn't think much of it at first. After all, he was a part of their team. But as the weeks went by, I began to notice the way she spoke about him, the way her eyes lit up when his name came up in conversation. It was small, fleeting moments, but they didn't escape me. I shrugged it off, trying to convince myself it was all just my imagination. Maybe I was being paranoid. But this message, it felt different. Olivia wasn't the type to send vague, cold messages without a reason. I reread it again, trying to make sense of it. I couldn't. The knot in my stomach tightened. I decided to pretend like I hadn't seen it. When Olivia came into the bedroom later, I laid in bed, eyes closed, feigning sleep. She had just returned from a long day, and I knew she'd want to wind down. I could hear her moving about the room, the soft rustling of clothes as she got ready for bed. I wanted to say something, ask her about the message, but the words wouldn't come. I wasn't sure I was ready for whatever the truth might be. Instead, I lay there in silence, the uncertainty eating away at me. My mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. Why would she be acting this way? What was going on behind closed doors that I didn't know? It had been a while since I felt this disconnected from her, like we were two strangers sharing the same space. I turned my head toward her as she got into bed beside me, the faint glow of the bedside lamp casting a soft light across her face. She looked at me briefly, her eyes lingering, and then turned away, pulling the covers up to her chin. Was she hiding something? I didn't sleep much that night, my mind replaying the strange message over and over again. The more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. But what? And why did it have to feel like this? I didn't have the answers yet. But I knew I would find them. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for what I might uncover. The next morning, I woke up to an empty side of the bed. Olivia had already left for work, as usual. The house was eerily quiet. The only sounds were the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint tap of the rain against the window. I lay there for a few moments, staring at the ceiling, trying to push the thoughts that had been lingering in my mind aside. But I couldn't. I got out of bed and headed downstairs, fixing myself a cup of coffee. I needed something to focus on, something to distract me from the gnawing unease that had taken root. But as the coffee brewed, my thoughts kept returning to that message. Why would Olivia send something so vague, so strange? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I had to know. I had to find out what was going on, even if it meant digging into places I wasn't sure I wanted to see. I didn't want to invade her privacy. I respected Olivia, I loved her, and trust was the foundation of our relationship. But the more I thought about it, the more that little voice inside my head grew louder, telling me to look. To find answers before my suspicions tore me apart. I stood up and walked to her desk, where she had left her phone charging the night before. I hesitated for a moment, then picked it up. It felt strange in my hands, like I was crossing some invisible line I couldn't uncross. But I had to know. I unlocked her phone with ease. She had never been particularly careful with her passcode. Her messages were the first thing that appeared. I scrolled through her recent conversations. The usual exchanges with friends, clients, and family. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But then, buried deep within the list, I found what I was looking for. Conversations with Lucas. I felt my heart sink as I clicked on the thread. There were dozens of messages, most of them sent late at night, during times she had claimed to be working late or out of town. They were casual at first, about meetings and projects, but then the tone shifted. Plans to meet at a hotel. An evening rendezvous. Flirty comments disguised as business talk. I felt sick as I read each one. The messages were unmistakable. Olivia and Lucas weren't just colleagues. They were involved in something much deeper, something that had been hidden from me for weeks, maybe even longer. My mind spun. I had always trusted Olivia. I had always believed in the sanctity of our relationship. But now, looking at the screen in my hand, I saw the lies. The betrayal. I had to confront her. I couldn't let this go. But the anger that bubbled up inside me was overwhelming. How long had this been going on? How long had she been lying to my face, pretending everything was fine? I was filled with a sense of betrayal I had never known before. I slammed the phone down on the counter, my breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't keep living this lie. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number for my lawyer. My hands were shaking as I heard the phone ring. This wasn't how I had imagined things going. I had built my life with Olivia, and now it felt like it was all falling apart. The lawyer answered, and I calmly explained the situation. He listened patiently as I told him about the evidence I had just uncovered. There was no turning back now. I was filing for divorce. The thought of it felt strange, like I was outside my body, watching myself make decisions I never thought I would have to make. But there was no choice. I couldn't live in a marriage built on lies. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when I knew it wasn't. I hung up the phone and sat down on the couch, trying to steady my breathing. I had to be strong. For myself. For what was left of my dignity. But even as I prepared to take the next steps, part of me held on to the hope that I was wrong. That maybe this was all some mistake, some misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew the truth. Olivia had betrayed me. And now I had to find a way to rebuild my life, to start over, even if it meant losing everything I had once thought was secure. The days following my decision were a blur. The paperwork for the divorce was filed, and I made arrangements to withdraw the investments I had made in the design business we had built together. Olivia had no idea what was coming. I hadn't confronted her yet. I wasn't ready to face the questions, the arguments, the lies that would no doubt follow. I wasn't sure I could bear hearing her excuses, the way she would try to explain it all away, as if I hadn't seen the truth with my own eyes. I spent my days in a daze, caught between anger and disbelief. It was hard to concentrate, hard to focus on anything other than the images of her with him, the messages that played over and over in my mind. I had always thought that when things like this happened, there would be some sign, some moment where everything would make sense. But now, in the aftermath, I felt lost. I needed to do something. I needed to reclaim control over my life, to find a way to heal, to start fresh. I reached out to some old contacts in the design world, people I hadn't spoken to in years. It wasn't easy at first. My confidence had taken a huge hit, and the idea of starting over felt daunting. But the more I spoke to people, the more I realized how much I had missed working for myself, how much I longed for the creative freedom that came with designing on my own terms. I decided to open my own design studio. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. It wasn't just about creating beautiful spaces anymore. It was about rediscovering who I was, what I was capable of without the shadow of Olivia's betrayal hanging over me. The studio wasn't much at first. A small office in an old building downtown, with cracked windows and creaky floors. But it was mine. It was my space, my sanctuary, and slowly, I started to pour everything I had into it. Every ounce of energy, every idea, every ounce of creativity that had been buried beneath the weight of my failed marriage found its way into the designs I created. I wasn't just designing interiors anymore, I was designing my future. At the same time, I kept my distance from Olivia. I didn't want to hear from her, didn't want her excuses. There were moments when I thought about confronting her, asking her how long it had been going on, why she had done it. But the truth was, I didn't need the answers. I didn't need to hear her side of the story. I had seen enough. The truth was already clear. She had made her choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. The first few months were difficult. I worked long hours, barely making ends meet. But slowly, the studio began to grow. Word of mouth spread, and clients who had once worked with Olivia and me began to reach out, asking for my help. It wasn't easy to rebuild the reputation I had once shared with her, but I did it. I made a name for myself, one design at a time. And in the midst of all that, I started to find peace again. It wasn't instantaneous, and it wasn't easy. But every day that I worked in my new studio, I felt a little more like myself. Every day that I was able to create something beautiful, something entirely my own, I felt the weight of the past lift just a little bit more. I had lost so much, yes. My marriage, my trust, my sense of stability. But I had also gained something I had almost forgotten about, myself. And that was enough to keep going. One day, as I sat at my desk reviewing plans for a new project, I looked out the window, seeing the city stretch before me. The clouds parted, letting a sliver of sunlight through. It wasn't a dramatic moment, no great epiphany. But it was a moment of quiet clarity. I was going to be okay. Not because I had everything figured out, but because I had finally started to take control of my life again. I wasn't defined by Olivia's betrayal. I wasn't defined by the failed marriage or the heartache. I was defined by my ability to rebuild, to start over, to create something new from the ruins of my past. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because I knew I was on the right path. The future was still uncertain, but it was mine to shape, one design at a time.